Welcome to the Real Advisor Podcast. TRAP, TRAP. Please follow us and join in the conversation on Twitter @Advisor Podcast, where you can suggest ideas and themes you'd like the TRAP team to discuss. Also remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a 6 out of 5-star review on iTunes. Doing all this really helps us, which means we can do more to help you. Now let's head over to the studio for the latest pile of TRAP.
Yes, indeed, dear Trappists. Welcome back to the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP, TRAP, episode 16. My name is Nick Lincoln. Joining me as ever are the 3 other horsemen of the apocalypse, the rest of the Trap Pack, Carl, the voice widger, Andy Hart, and Alan, the storyteller Smith. Now, the last episode 15, that was by a country mile, I think, our most influential episode, certainly our most popular in terms of downloads. We basically got through the 2,000 downloads mark in 8 days, which is really good for a podcast just 15 episodes in. So thanks to all of the Trappists who took part in the social conversation. I think we moved the dial a little bit on the perception of SJP. And that's what we're here for, really. We want to have a chat with you as our audience, and we want the show formed by you, and we want to hit the nail, and we don't always want to be popular. And all 4 of us in our lives have been really good at not always being popular. It's probably our biggest achievement, the thing we're best at. Right, gentlemen, we have a show packed full of absolutely nothing, so let's start unpacking it straight away. Andrew, I know you're all fired up. You've got that enthusiasm, that brio going to give us some more really nice reviews of Trap.
Over to me for the reviews. First review is from Can Witter on the Apple podcast platform. Making financial advice fun, 5 stars. If you're a financial advisor who wants to be an actual financial advisor and not a product seller, this is the one for you. 6 stars. Sorry, couldn't find the 6th one, Nick. Next up is from Cogent14, 5 stars, gold. Mentors, done the courses, the learning, the wisdom, 3 kisses. Final review is from Gem11. By advisors, for advisors, 5 stars. I picked this up from the fantastic Andy Hart Maven Money podcast. I love this podcast. Thank you, Trappists. Also, would say I particularly like that everyone has their own particularly passionate views and are not afraid to disagree. Keep it real. Back to you, Nick.
Great stuff. Thanks, everybody, for the reviews. So, topical tidbits to give this episode 16, a timestamp. Okay, let's get it out of the way. Let's defer to our man in Ireland. Well done, my friend.
Hilarious.
And they'll also see that I was deeply uncomfortable with the content of some of today's podcast, owing to the Irish versus UK cultural differences.
Does that take you back to the Aviva Stadium? You put that video out of the crowd just going absolutely mad when the match was in the bag.
Yeah.
I think it looked amazing.
Yeah, it was. Ireland Grand Slam champions 2023 in the same year as a World Cup. What could possibly go wrong?
What's it go wrong? Peak between the World Cup.
It was an amazing day. I managed to blag myself some tickets for myself and my kids, so the 5 of us went up, and it was just an incredible day. What was brilliant about it was after the game, everyone in the stadium stayed, and the stadium was absolutely rocking. It was just superb. Freddie Stewart should not have been sent off without any question. Are we sorry? Not even slightly. So
okay, enough in this section.
A day to remember for absolute sure, one to remember, and very, very hopeful, although an unbelievably tough draw in the World Cup. Very, very hopeful for what might happen come September, October.
You're up against the mighty Scots. There's a date in October in Paris, Saturday night. We might even go and watch it. That would be an interesting.
Bring your own tear gas. Looking at the recent videos of France. Jesus Christ!
Now, Nick.
Massive
good stuff.
Game,
Okay.
But why is that? That's because the state pension age in France is being pushed back from age 62, and they're going absolutely nuts.
Yeah, but it's not. There's something else there, because most of the writers are in their 20s. If you're 25, you don't care the state pension age. You can't even imagine getting the state pension age. There's something. There's a lot of tension in France, but let's not go down there. Especially Paris. Okay, so topical tidbits. Yodeler a website that I found. I'm sure some of you guys, I'm sure Andy knows of it. If you ever want to, as IFAs, Trappists, if you ever want a one-stop shop, a site to have reports that demolish wealth managers, go to Yodeler. I'll put a link to it in the so-called show notes. Aaron.
It's so called.
So called. But the latest demolition job is on Fisher Investments, and I'll leave it at that. But quite a useful site.
Having had such a positive trap episode last time regarding SJP, they do a demolition job. Yodeler. I don't know who's behind them, but I've had a look at a few of the companies they review, and they're generally, demolition is the word.
I think that is
they're very, very
controversy. I think there's a controversy who backs Yodeler. So look into it yourself if you want to find out a bit more. Yeah, there's a few companies. Right. That's why it's a little bit controversial.
Okay, the next topical tidbit, Carl. This is very UK central, but we have to mention it because it was massive. Was the most recent Chancellor, this year's Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, and came out with his budget, and there were some floated rumours that the lifetime allowance would be raised to 1.8 million, back to where it was a few years ago, which would have been nice. And maybe the annual allowance will get fiddled around with, the tapered annual allowance, the money purchasing allowance. Well, he got rid of the lifetime allowance, as we all know. He got rid of the lifetime allowance and increased the annual allowance to 60,000. Mr. Ha, what do you think about that?
Well, I think the key word, Nick, is abolished. Abolished the lifetime allowance. And in recent years, it's all been talk about reducing the annual allowance. It's rather odd. There must be more going on with this than we know about as such, because years ago it was the pension death tax that used to be 55% on death. That's why people spent their pensions quite aggressively. We all said that's a bit harsh. It should be reduced or chipped down a bit. I think Gorgeous George made the changes and he reduced it down to 0, and nobody was asking for it. It's very odd. And again, the lifetime allowance, we were like, it's a bit harsh being at 1,073,100. It would be good if it goes up to 1.8, and they've abolished it again. So the pension, I mean, we're in the golden age of pensions, the gift that keeps on giving, absolutely fantastic. 70% of the money I look after is in pensions. It will probably be 80, 90% over the next few years. 60K you can do per annum, 120K for a couple. I mean, yes, it is helping out the rich, but I think the real impact of it is going to be less brain drain. Obviously, technical qualified people in various different professions will now hang around a bit more at the final years of their peak, contribution to their professions, rather than thinking, I might as well just bugger off because I'm just getting hammered from tax left, right and centre. So huge news for us. Great news for lots of planning opportunities. Also, the corporation tax is going up. So again, it's just every single way you look, the pensions are getting better and better and better. So all good. Over to you, Alan.
Yeah, brief thoughts. I think it's absolutely right that the lifetime allowance should be abolished, because otherwise it's a tax on people taking risk and investing in equities and likely to perform better than other asset classes. Nick, you wrote a really good piece. I don't know, it was a few years ago, because you posted on something that I saw recently. You should post a link to it on the so-called show notes as well. Because it was, it gave an example of exactly that, of people being penalized for doing what is actually productive activity versus others. So I think it's right that it goes, but inevitably the Labour Party announced that if they win the next election, they will reverse it all. And then they subsequently tweeted a bit to say they'll reverse it all apart from workers for the NHS. So everyone who works in the private sector, or everyone indeed who works in the public sector, but not in the NHS, which is a few 100,000 or million people, will be disadvantaged. And good luck with trying to get that through. But we'll see. Yeah, it makes, in theory, it makes life very difficult to do long term, because we're all in the long term financial planning game. And if you've got new legislation that's come in, it might be reversed within 2 years. But as I've always said, we can only play the cards in front of us. We can only base our decisions and our advice on the legislation as it currently exists, and not speculate. Otherwise, we'd have never invested in pensions before at all, because every single year, every pre-budget, tax-free cash or pension commencement lump sum is rumoured to be being removed or reduced. And there is a slightly insidious part of this legislation, which is, we know, that sum, that tax-free cash amount, is being frozen at a particular level. And over time, that will have a greater impact on the overall tax efficiency of pensions. But in the short term, it's definitely good news and creates far greater planning opportunities. So one small positive step by our current government.
Yeah, just a quick comment from me. I think, look, the point is well made, Alan, about legislation changes. And it doesn't it just point out how difficult it is for the DIY investor who's not looking at this stuff all of the time. You know, you need to have somebody in your corner who is looking at all these changes all the time and making sure that you're aligned with the latest regulation in terms of tax and etc. And yeah, look, this comes hot on the heels of the big changes in the Irish pension regulations last December. We still do have a limit. It's 2 million or 2.15 million really. But you can pay in whatever you want. So we don't have the annual limits, but we do have an overall limit. But can only be good for anybody who's doing proper financial planning. And also good to see you guys following on suit from the Irish guys.
Well, it sounds as if we've got the opposite.
Fool.
The opposite. You have no limit. You have no annual allowance, but you have a lifetime allowance. Final point on this. I mean, as a practicing financial advisor, we have issues with this all. It's what you tilt towards. It's usually the pension beats the ISA for a client, but I sort of do a sort of 80-20. Okay, we'll sort of divert 80% of the capital there, 20% here, because the rules could change. So I don't want to go all in on the strategy at the time. I sort of split it out a bit. I think it's called asset location, that sort of discussion with clients. But yeah, at the moment, certainly the pension wins in pretty much every comparison, really. Yeah, back to you, Nick.
Yeah. And I mean, from a political, and this is not a political comment, and Andy, so don't get nervous, but Hunt was very clever the way he framed it, because he made it all about the NHS and doctors. Yeah. So, and of course, that's the Labour high ground, really, you know. So if Labour do come in, if they do unwind this, they're going to probably try to have to carve it out for the doctor, which I think is almost impossible, because if you carve it out for the doctors and the NHS, the civil servants are going to say, well, hold on, how come they've got to carve out and we haven't? So I think that was really well played by him, but we'll see. All we can do is act. One of you mentioned it there. All we can do is act in what we know now, right? If you were going to wait for the next government or the next thing, you'd never do anything. You'd be permanently in a state of stasis of doing nothing. We can just act on what we know now, and it's just crack on. This is very good news. And from my OCD side of me, how nice to have an annual allowance that's divisible without any pence at the end. £5,000 a month. Dot. Perfect. Straight on. Lovely. Not £3,333.33.
And 4K.
Okay. Next topical tip. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, you've done your tax relief calculations, Andy. Yes, that's good. You should pay someone to knock up a spreadsheet to do that. Aegon reduces cash interest rates on its platform. Yeah, I saw this. It's just, I mean, Christ, talk about bad PR. Aegon somehow is reducing the cash it pays on its platform at a time when interest rates have gone up from effectively 0 to 4 or 5% in this country in a record period of time. And I read the article in Citywire, and there was a link to it. And they try and justify it. I just think some of these big corporations are so tin-eared. There's no excuse for doing it. If you're going to do it, don't do it now. I don't know if you guys thought about that.
What was their reason?
It was they've overpaid in the past. I can't quite remember. I kind of lost the will to live, really. It was yeah. I don't know.
Well, you know the cash on platforms is generally, and certainly in historical times,
why don't they just be honest?
The single biggest profit center.
Why don't they just be honest and say, we're a business, and in order to be profitable, this is how we're going to treat our cash?
Yeah, the amount of money that the likes of Hargreaves Lansdown make on their cash.
Charles Schwab, BlackRock, all of them, Vanguard, they all make loads of money from cash.
It's a real differentiating point. I mean, you know, if you use Transact, you know that when the base rate is 0.25, the clients are going to get nothing on the cash because but when the rates go up, they don't retain any of it. They give it out, you know, bar their charges to the clients. But some platforms, as you say, it's their biggest cash cow. Yeah, strange. Okay, we had our first Twitter thread. I don't know who put that into our agenda because no one's put the name by it, so I'm throwing it out there.
If nobody's going to claim it, I'll claim it.
I referred to it. I mean, it's no big issue. I got excited for a second, but because a gentleman who I don't know by the name of Simon Glendinning, I think, who looks like, based on his profile, a relatively new advisor relatively new joiner of the profession, who wrote a Twitter thread. I quite like Twitter threads. Do a few of them myself from time to time. But he was
you do, don't you? Yeah.
And the amount of tumbleweed that I received once I post them, no one likes them. I enjoy them. But he wrote about, I think it was about the episode we had a few episodes ago about sort of advice to new joiners to the profession. And he sort of summarized it all in a neat and elegant thread. But it was the first time we'd ever received something like this, a sort of summary of one of the Trap episodes from a practitioner. So, yeah, it was nice. It was good. That was it, Nick.
Yeah, no, good. Nice of you to... Yeah, I read it. It was good. Yeah, it is. It's kind of shows that we're doing something right, I think. Okay, the next item, Carl, you can just... you talk as much as you feel comfortable talking about it.
Sorry, Nick, what's the next item on the agenda?
MBO. Apparently it was an MBO by...
Oh, yeah. So,
absolute shambles.
Yeah, I had my mic was muted and I was off in a world of my own. Yeah, so we announced to Métis Ireland that we have concluded an MBO. So Métis Ireland is now entirely owned by myself and my colleagues and our chairman. So yeah.
It's been a good week for the Irish, hasn't it?
A very good week. So yeah, look, anyone who's been through these kind of things understand and appreciate how long that they actually take in the background. So I've been working on this one for a while. So look, just really exciting times. And yeah, we can, we're very excited for what the future brings. So all systems go at Métis.
Congratulations.
And explain what an MBO is to people that don't understand that term, Carl.
A management buyout. So what we did was the company bought back some shares and then individuals bought some shares. So, and all of the individuals who bought the shares are involved in the company.
Brilliant.
Very good. Very good. Okay, and the next thing on the topical tidbits that you can't see, Carl, so it's your point. Stock market volatility. Banks in bother. Stick with the plan. The best time to invest was 10 years ago. The next best time is today for long-term investors.
Yeah, I just thought it would be remiss of us. It would be remiss of us to not mention the stock market volatility. We did mention the last time SVB, which I always have difficulty pronouncing. And then Credit Suisse had their own issues, and it seems like there's a couple of others having a few problems as well. And whether it's linked to interest rate rises or whatever, it is what it is. And for me, it just seems like, there's a problem, and the stock markets have a temporary decline. And then, there's a rescue package of some description, and then stock markets seem to bounce back pretty quickly. So there's a lot of volatility out there. And I don't know about you guys, but we have several people who are kind of sitting on the fence and, going, don't know, is it a good time to invest? What if this turns into the financial crisis and all that kind of stuff? So it's incumbent on us to, just talk them through that whole process that, yeah, the best time to invest was 10 years ago and the next best time is right now. So, yeah. Nick.
With those clients, Carl, the clients that are waiting on the sidelines and they don't want to invest because of today's catastrophe of catastrophes, do you ever do the drip feed thing with them? So they've got a 600 grand, we'll invest 100 grand over the next 6 months. Do you ever adopt that philosophy or have tried to?
Yeah. So I have a real case right now where the guy and the girl, the couple are sitting on money and they've decided that they're going to average their price over the next 12 months, probably in quarterly payments as opposed to monthly. We all know that the maths don't support that. However, I think equally as important as the maths is human behavior and making somebody comfortable. And especially for clients who are new to your financial planning firm, it is so important that they get comfortable with the whole process at the outset. And we've just gone through the whole financial planning. They've totally and utterly bought into it. Very, very clever people. And I've just told them this is absolutely 100% relevant and okay to do. So, yeah.
I'll just make a couple of points on this. because this whole aspect of phasing, so it's an interesting one, and I completely buy into the psychological benefit. And it depends where the money is currently. If it's in cash, particularly when I've worked in the past with business owners who've exited and they've got a chunk of cash that they've worked 25 years to create, the psychological challenge of investing there and seeing a temporary decline of 25% in rapid order is not one that anyone wants to experience. So phasing becomes appropriate and relevant. We did a piece of work a few years ago now, but it still stands up to scrutiny, which is to say, just looking at the maths, that phasing from cash doesn't really work. And phasing over 6 or 12 months doesn't really work, doesn't really achieve your objectives. If you're going to phase, you've got to phase through the risk portfolios, like from your, let's say, in our terms, our 20% equity portfolio, and then phase through 40, 60, 80, 100, or whatever you're going to end up towards, number one, so you are invested somewhat. And doing it over 12 months, again, looking at 100 years of data, doing it over 12 months doesn't really give you a lot of benefit. You've got to be doing over 3 years if you really want to benefit. And this is just a statistical analysis of historical returns. Had you ever done that through the best and worst periods? I think I can share some of that research we had done.
I like just to go back on that, Alan. I get that the maths don't work, but at the same time, what you've just described there to me sounds a little bit complex for somebody who's entering into the whole financial planning process for the first time.
Oh, really?
That's just me, though. But
it's just we're going to phase you over 36 months. We're going to phase you through
different equity portfolios. I just don't know. For someone who's nervous about equities anyway.
So what are you phasing from cash, the sticking in cash, and then drip feeding over 12 months? Yeah. All right. Again, so psychologically, that's probably satisfactory. Mathematically, it's suboptimal.
Yeah, I know.
Andy.
Yeah, I did cover this in a podcast I did on Maven Money called Invest by Sunset. Hopefully I've dispelled this whole concept, but it's worth checking out if you're an advisor. It will certainly arm you if you're going to do it with clients. Just back to Carl's point, and I'm sure he's done it. If you are phasing it, it needs to be agreed on day one what percentages are going in and on what days, because otherwise it will be market timing which dictates. So if you are going to do 20% today, 20% in 90 days time or 91 days, the phasing strategy needs to be agreed at the outset. Otherwise, you're just relying on market timing, which is a mess you don't want to be in. But
so what you're saying is, so say markets fell. We had one of those things, March 2020 or whatever. Markets fell 20%, 30%.
Yep.
You still got to go ahead. You're still investing.
Intellectually,
it's a great time to invest.
Intellectually, it's a bad strategy. We know that. The market's generally going up 75% of the time. And going down 25% of the time. So you deploy your money by sunset. If you don't want to do that because you're not a financial robot and you're a human, then we need to employ a human strategy. That's when you discuss what percentages are we doing in what days. If we agree on the outset, I can facilitate that. I'm pandering to you, but I can facilitate that. If you're going to say to me, I'm going to do 20% today and see where we go, that's a complete, disaster. So I'm happy. I've never actually phased it. I've always talked the client off and just investing it now, and then holding their hand and going through all the things. And there could be a temporary decline, et cetera, et cettra. We've all been there. It's something we dealt with for our entire career. I mean, you just get better at it.
Look, I agree with, I agree with everything you've said. It can come across as a bit salesy, right? We're talking here to financial advisors. It can come across a little bit pushy if you're saying to people, I think, you should go now.
But it's the right thing to do,
I'm trying to find the sweet spot. Yeah. I appreciate Andy, but also the right thing to do is to invest 100% in equities. And I'm perfectly okay with people adding bonds to their portfolios too. So I'm trying to find a sweet spot between getting people across the line and invested over the long term and doing the exact right thing all the time. And human psychology comes into it. And I defer to that rather than the maths.
But that's why I'd start off.
I've had one client who
if you were a financial robot, this is what you would do. You're not a financial robot, you're a human. So you're going to try and find some suboptimal solution. At least have that conversation with them. But yeah, cool. Over to you, Nick.
I had one client, I think in my career as a financial planner who's phased, and he phased a couple of years ago, £1 million into one fund. And he did phase 250 grand a time. But as you said, Andy, it was on an agreed schedule. So we didn't I said, okay, well, I'm doing it on these dates. Okay, that's when it's getting done.
Deployed then,
and he just sail through. We didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't look at any extraneous conditions, what was happening in the markets on those dates. It's just, this is when we're going to do it. And we did it. And he was happy doing it. And I think at the end of the day, we know that people are better served by being invested in the great companies, and how they get there. In the scheme of things, does it really matter? No, I don't think it does. It's just that let's manage their behaviors. They're human beings. They've got emotions. If it makes them feel comfortable by phasing, fine. And do it over whatever period you think is best for that particular person would be my summary on that. Okay, good topical tidbits there. We've a lot to cover. Obviously, for the UK advisors, the pension stuff is was massive. I think if you're okay with it, gents, we'll move on to the meat and potatoes. I can see behind me the trap back of house team are busy peeling the spuds. So let's move on to a different sound drop this time, Alan. I've got rid of that liquid. It's just now potato peelers.
I don't know what sort of meat and potatoes you've been used to eating, but that was not a good drop last time.
No, it was a funny one, wasn't it? It was like someone weeing into a bowl of meat and potatoes, which isn't. That's not the vogue we're going for. Okay, so the meat and potatoes of this episode
just to say this one is also terrible. But anyway,
really, I thought you'd like the sound.
What is the sound of meat and potatoes? I mean, what is that sound?
Well, it's going to be like sloppy, isn't it? Anyway, listen.
What does it even mean? Let's put
dear
it
Trappist,
in the so-called show notes.
The main content.
If you know a good source, Trappists, for food sound drops, send them in. Okay, send them in, and I shall listen to them. I've tried. I've been down every rabbit hole trying to find decent food noises. Anyway, the meat and potatoes, and we will get there, of this episode 16, is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. As a profession, on the both professional side and on the manufacturing/industrial side, we have a terrible tendency to overcomplicate. And it's the bane of what it's one of the worst things in financial services. Mr. Hart, you raised this subject, because I know it's something dear and close to what heart you have. You lead off, young man.
Well, I'm sure a lot of advisors listening to this have straddle this area of, should they be doing more? Should they be? So I believe the results of working with the great financial planner is sort of two things. We're either removing financial anxiety for our clients, or we're promoting great financial behavior. The rest is plumbing and admin and noise. So they're the two sort of results. We're trying to remove or reduce financial anxiety for our clients and promote great financial behavior. What I see is too many financial advisors overcomplicating for profit, certainly on the investment side, incredibly convoluted investment solutions, shed load of funds, nothing makes sense, but on paper it looks complicated, therefore it must be good. So, and they also have a lot of strategies that they employ that are temporary strategies based on rules that are likely to change. So then they set up these very expensive strategy structures. Clients haven't got a clue what they are. They seem to sound enticing, and they're going to save either tax or they're going to get some additional return. And then 5 years down the line, the rules change and they're back at square one, and they've got to now reset up another complicated strategy. Also, financial advisors say, I've got complex clients. And I think, well, have I got complex clients, or my clients become less complex with the work that I've done with them? Or am I just on top of all of their complexity, so therefore it seems like they're quite simple clients for me? I think the idea is to simplify people's finances over time. I say to clients, it's going to take 2 or 3 years to get your full financial house in order. There's about 40 things we need to do, but I'm not going to do 40 things in month one. I'm going to do the ones that, low hanging fruit, getting the big stuff done. And then over time, we're going to tweak and get your financial house in order. I see it overcomplicating for lots of financial advisors, complex strategies, overcomplicating investment solutions. And if there's any advisors out there that think, should they be doing more? Our job is to protect our clients from this complexity. And there's always a flavour of the month that comes in that a lot of advisors jump on. And I think, hold up, is this going to be good for my clients long term? Or is this going to be a phase thing that I'm trying to protect my clients from? We do things here that have always worked. Anything which is working now, we try and avoid. That's the intro into this section. Who's up next?
I think it's Mr. Smith, because one of the areas of the world that we're in, this thing of ours, obviously are investments and investment funds. And if you want to find an area that is overcomplicated for its own sake, it's areas of the investment fund management business and the advisors who use those funds. Mr. Smith, what do you think about that?
I agree wholeheartedly. This is going to be one of our sessions where we all are in violent agreement with each other. I don't think anyone is going to dispute this, because
give it time.
I'm sure
we'll find something.
Yes, we have. Obviously, we do financial planning, and we recommend investments. And the world of investments is wide and complex. It's in the UK alone. It's a £7 trillion industry. And oh boy, are there people and organizations who try to make things complicated and esoteric and weird. And it seems that the kind of almost like in a lot of things in life, the wealthier you are, the more complex things are. So you go to fancier restaurants and you buy more expensive, complex watches and all that sort of stuff. So, and the financial services world likes to replicate that. And I'll tell you a brief story about what a few years ago, where colleagues of mine.
Grab yourself a drink, a very long drink. It's story time with Alan Smith.
There we go, boys. So you're probably all the same as us. You get promotions, you get sent emails, you get phone calls, you get from various fund groups. And we used to sort of have a laugh about this because, we got. I'm old enough and been in business long enough to remember companies like Arch Crew, Key Data. Remember them?
Yeah.
But they had promotions, they had road shows, people attended them. Film partnerships. That's another one. I mean, film partnerships, I never really understood how the whole thing worked. I went to a few, because it was all the rage and everyone was talking about it. And I felt, we must be missing out. And someone explained it to me and I said, I don't really understand it. Can you tell me again? Someone told me about 3 times. I thought, I don't really get it. Because you had to, you took out a loan and you bought some stuff, you got some tax break. It all seemed a bit convoluted and unnecessary. So we never went near them. But the funny thing was we kept getting these emails and introductions to road shows and things. And so some colleagues and I, we ran a little competition to find the weirdest, the most esoteric fund opportunity that it was being suggested we would refer to our clients. Now, things like, an obvious one was fine wine. There's funds that set up, you can invest in wine.
Yeah.
All right. Real thing. There was one that you could invest in stamps. People buy, penny blacks and whatever. So there's an actual, proper fund that was set up to invest in stamps. There was a commodity fund that was heavily promoted a few years ago. And we just had a laugh about it because you look at the sort of subholdings. Timber was one. Get this, lean hog. Lean hog was a subset of the fund you invested in.
You want to go long on fat hog? Who goes long on lean hog? They're nuts.
Lean hog. It's pork futures. Pork futures were investing in, but it was raising a lot of money. There was one which was a bloodstock fund. So you were investing in racehorses and looking at prize money from racing. Absolute true story that you could invest in a fund and you could any of us could have recommended them to clients, but the winner of the competition that we only ran it for about 6 weeks to see what sort of crazy stuff we'd see, because normally you just press delete. No, you don't pay any attention to it. We thought, no, we're going to pay attention to see what's out there. And the winner of the competition was a shipwreck fund.
Exactly what I was going to say.
100% true story.
I know people that invested in it. I've seen clients.
Well, shipwreck fund.
It's EIS or VCT.
No way, really?
Yeah.
I have no idea what it was. But
treasure in
companies raising capital, investing in a I don't know, the equipment you need to send people out deep sea diving to find these buried treasure from old sort of sunken Spanish galleons. I mean, seriously. And people, the point being, you think that's a joke. Regulated advisors were recommending it because they thought we need to diversify. Why invest in the great companies of the world where you can invest in a shipwreck fund and some bloodstock, some fine wine?
Normally, people don't do things in plain sight, but if they're calling it a shipwreck fund, they're telling you it's going to be a shipwreck. All right?
Made off.
It's going to sink beyond trace.
Made off.
Yeah.
Made off, yeah. Where's Bernie? Well, he's made off with your money, Gran. Carl, you simplify your investment process probably to the absolute, as pure and as clean as it can be. Tell the dear Trappists what your investment process is and why you think that works.
So in the Irish market is a little bit different. I've explained this before, that not everybody, in fact, very few firms are using platforms. So number one, we decided, right, for the vast majority where we possibly can, we're going to invest in a platform. And then in that platform, 95% of the investments with our clients are in either the dimensional world allocation funds or the Vanguard life strategies. And that's as simple as we keep it, and it can't get any simpler. And for us, all the added value is really in the financial planning and managing the taxes where we can, and keeping up with the legislation, and making sure people are living the life that they want to live. It's the added value is not in the investment. So I was kind of having to think about this. So like, it's incumbent on us really, isn't it, to try and keep it as simple as we possibly can. So that kind of translates into how we run our business as well. And maybe there's another episode in how we kind of run our firms and all that kind of stuff, and run teams. But we've mentioned the pod structures before, and that's about keeping it really, really simple and not having loads of layers and stuff, and making sure that we have kind of just 3 people wrapped around every single client, and keeping that simple. Having your systems and processes written down, this is from the financial planning firm point of view, to make sure that every client gets the same every single time. And that precludes you from investing or being tempted ever to invest in a shipwreck fund, which I've never heard of, and that is just bloody mad. But I see here in Ireland the last 10 years or maybe even more, loan notes. I don't know if you guys have loan notes over there, but yeah, there was a firm actually, front of yesterday's paper was closed down because they had it was a financial planning firm, not closed down. They were suspended from trading for a year by the central bank because their associated firm that had the similar directors were running a loan note firm, and the financial planning or financial advisory firm was promoting then these to their clients, and it's been shut down. So there is kind of good stuff in terms of regulation coming down the road about what's allowed to be regulated and what's not. The thing that just doesn't sit well with me is unregulated investments can still be sold by financial advisory firms. They just have to whip out their regulated by the central bank at the bottom of their head of paper. At least that's what it used to be. I'm assuming it still is now. So why can't we just get rid of these things? And, if you are a regulated firm, you cannot sell unregulated investments. Surely it's a pretty straightforward and easy scenario.
So simple. So simple.
It's yeah.
Can I just... I wanted to, I knew we'd find something to disagree with. Really? Carl,
enough time.
Your one fund solution. So that, did you say life strategy or the dimensional version? So
dimensional world allocation.
Dimensional world, yeah.
Right. So that's a package. So you can't then, and correct me if I'm wrong, I might have got this wrong, but you can't then sort of pick apart the components of that. So in other words, let's just say it's a 60-40 or an 80-20. Correct. Right. So that would cause us some difficulty. We do some strategic planning around the asset allocation. But if we are doing a rebalance, or we need to manage CGT, or we need to just take some money out of the portfolio, there'll be a particular time that we wouldn't want to take it across all asset classes and we want to be a little bit more specific and unpack the component parts. So that probably wouldn't really work for us as one packaged fund. It gives you less opportunity to do some smart planning, in my opinion.
Well, so my comeback on that is as follows, right? So if you're investing in a platform and you have the vast majority of your money in, for example, the dimensional world allocation funds, we can drill down into that. I don't think this is what you meant, but we can drill down into, there's 10,500 stocks in it and there's 800 bond holdings, etc. But I don't think that was your point. I think your point is, how do we take money out? So for us, then, how do you take money out? Well, So that's about your financial planning, right? And that's about your AGMs with your clients every year to identify over the coming few years, what kind of cash do we need? And I think I'm blue in the face from saying this. A lot of the added value is so we all have clients who have high net worth, right? And the strategies for them about withdrawal is about taking the right amounts of money out of the right pots at the right time. So we can always identify what's coming And you can identify that a couple of years out. And tax on investments is a little bit different here than it is over there, right? But tax on investments is a good thing because that means the investments are going up. So at some stage down the line, you're going to have to pay the tax. And if you can identify, a year or 2 or 3 in advance, well, that allows you to, be clever about where you take the money from, what pots you take the money from. So I'm very comfortable with it. The alternative, of course, is that you leave money in cash for drawdowns. I don't believe that that's in the long term, that's a good strategy. However, for the next couple of years, we'll always have our clients who are just sitting on money in their bank account, which is their expenses for the next couple of years. So that's how we kind of get around that. There are other more complex ways of doing it, but for me, it is. I do believe that our investment strategies and our financial planning process are as simple as we can possibly make them. And for example, our financial planning presentations are like one-act plays. Everybody in the room knows what they're doing, and every single client in Métis gets the same screens at the same time during all the meetings.
Andrew, I also think financial advisors think it's their job to share with clients like how complicated this business is. Whereas I sort of tee them up and I say, look, do you want to know all the sort of boring detail behind this, or do you want me to just get on with this? At least ask them the question. Whereas I think a lot of advisors think clients want to hear all of this complexity and how they've got to this solution. Whereas I'm a bit more like high level with clients, and I've done all the thinking, and there's a lot of admin in the background, there's a load of plumbing I need to do. The outcome is, X, Y, Z. Do you want to know any more? And they often say, no, not really. And just get on with it. Is there anything I need to do? No. Is there anything I need to action? No. So yeah, I'm a massive fan of shrinking your circle of competence as an advisor over time. And not missing anything out for the client for the sake of not wanting to do it, but thinking long and hard, do I need to introduce this to this client's life? Over to you, Carl.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a real life situation we had was last Friday. So new client sold his business. So met with the client and his wife, who's very successful in her own right. Myself and Mary Carney, one of our financial planners, met with them, went through the financial plan. And I would say the meeting lasted an hour and 35 minutes, let's say. Definitely the financial planning piece came first, and it lasted an hour and 15 minutes. And our investment pitch, or education piece, whatever you want to call it, is 3 slides. And that's all it is. Number 1 is the wall of worry, Andy, that you've given us. Number 2 is, at the moment, we have a piece about, well, what do stock markets tend to do after 20% decline? And then the last one is the page lifted from the Dimensional World Allocation book. And what we focus on there is our 3 numbers, right? Number 1, what did it do last year? So let's all just be straight up about that. Number 2, what's the long-term average return? And number 3, what's the lowest one-year return? So there's, if you're all familiar with this page, there's tons and tons of numbers on it. We highlight those 3 numbers. So we're looking for, people who are comfortable with the 60-40 fund, for example, was, I think, the worst one-year decline, temporary decline, was 24.9% or something like that, whereas the long-term average return is in excess of 7%. So we're not saying we're going to be guaranteeing anything. Who knows what's going to happen next? But this is what the history tells us. And we certainly are not bringing any bloody well loan notes or shipwreck funds or any of that crap to it. And I'm very, very comfortable with this. And this is what I would invest in myself if I had the type of money that those clients had. And that's absolutely...
Do you know what we've had? Doing the right thing. What we've had, Carl, and you talk about someone who's sold their business now, and we've got quite a few clients like that. And what they get, they often will get an earn-out. So they get a lump of money sort of day one on completion. And then over the next 2, 3, 4, up to 5 years or so, they get further funds. And what regularly happens is, so we set everything up as you'd expect in our sensible, low-cost portfolios. And then they come back and say, I have another chunk of money a couple of years later. What should we do with this? And we say, we'll do the same. And they say, well, haven't you got anything else? Yeah. Do you have that? Clients, surely there must be something. Well, yes, there's a million other things, including shipwreck funds and bloodstock funds, but we're going to protect you from that. I often talk, some of us on this call are old enough to remember the advert for John West. I think it's John West tuna or something, and it was the John West is best. It's the fish that John West rejects. And I say most of our life is spent protecting you and rejecting 99.9% of everything out there.
Yeah.
Yes,
but there is something else we can invest.
The stuff that you would love for me to sell to you.
Yeah,
they would love.
I could put together something really exciting and interesting. Oh my goodness! But I'm not going to. Here's all the things.
They don't. Yeah, they don't want to invest the next.
I'm going to put it in the same thing.
80 portfolio. No, I got these 12 new ideas. You ready for it? Right, we've got the shipwreck fund, we've got the forestry fund, we've got the crypto fund. They're loving it, absolutely loving it, sitting there in a chair. Yeah. No, we protect you from that financial crash. That's what you're paying me for.
But back to the idea of dealing with human beings, it's what we call dinner party conversation, cocktail party conversation. You can talk to your friends about crypto investing, forestry investment. My God, you could talk to them about shipwreck investing all after you'd entertain. Our funds, our investments are boring. It's
the treasure in the shipwrecks, that they're going for. It's the treasure in the shipwrecks. So it's treasure investing, really, if you want to pitch it correcectly.
Maybe that's where the cryptocurrency
that's sort of
is.
Treasuries. Just one other brief point I'd like to make on this subject. I see a lot of activity with advisors recommending for those, now that cash rates are higher than they were a little while ago, and investing, and I'm not going to name any names, but these kind of platforms that you can invest and you can put money in. It's not invest, it's just putting money in cash and diversifying them across a bunch of different banks, building societies or whatever, rather than, because everyone is concerned about, in the UK, we have this financial services compensation scheme limit. I think that's what it is. But anyway, it was £85,000 last time I looked. So if the bank went bust, you're protected to the tune of 85,000. So anyone with more than 85,000 would spread them across. And rather than having 27 different bank accounts, you can put them on a platform. To me, that is what you call asymmetric risk, in as much as the upside is minimal, because in terms of where you might put your money, because we are a standard default. And again, I'll go back to people who've got large sums of money and for various reasons, they're keeping it in cash, usually temporarily. In the UK, National Savings and Investments, NS&I, currently pays, I think, something like 3% for instant access money, and a bit more if you want to tie it up for a year, 4%. And yes, you can get a tiny bit more elsewhere, but the upside is marginal and the downside is catastrophic, because who knows, the amount of things have happened over the years, the things it's never happened before, which have happened. I just don't see the benefit of using these, but I know a lot of advisors do. A lot of advisors support them heavily.
NSCI for a couple can put millions away. Elegant simplicity, NS&I. Elegant simplicity in all of its form. It's a wonderful solution. And when you tell it to like lawyers and people that are looking after, they're like, "Really? I can just do that?" And like, yes, all of your stress has been answered by that one solution.
And
they're like, brilliant.
It's
I'm going to shift a few million.
It's not well known.
Yeah, and lawyers don't even know about it. Lawyers don't even know about it. Yeah,
and he said, "Someone said to me, is that a bank?" I said, "No, it's."
Yeah,
Carl, so you and I get a room and just come back in half an hour.
Attorney capacity.
That's it.
Yeah, a lot of professionals don't know about that.
Okay,
what do you think about Nick? Would you agree, Nick?
Oh, am I being asked? What do I think? Oh, that's nice. Okay, I think. Thank you for that, Alan. That was seamless. Wow. This is a bane of my life. I think.
Yeah, come on.
I certainly have, and I'm going to rattle through. I think this aggravates me as much as it aggravates Andy. This overcomplication. I know it aggravates all of us actually. Roger Edwards, who was the ex-marketing director of Scottish Provident and then Bright Grey, he's kind of made his career from just his messages, simplify everything down. And he put a tweet out the other day saying, in response, something I put out there, we live in a world so complex that people are suspicious of something simple. But simple is so much harder to do than complex, which is why so many things are complex in the first place. And I know there are loads of quotes out there. And I mean, if Albert Einstein said everything that is attributed to him, it can't be. But Einstein once said that smart people simplify things. He also said, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. And our profession, from the advisory side and the manufacturing side, is absolutely riddled with complication, with people who just want to take something simple and make it into a bloody quagmire of overcomplication for its own sake. And now, I know some advisors who just seem compelled to make work for themselves to no end. And it drives me scatty. I mean, I put together, Adobe is a very good example of Adobe is a well-known brand name, right? We all use Adobe in one form or another. It might be as simple as just the free PDF reader, but their products are over-engineered to the nth degree. And it's just like, I cannot be arsed with this. I'm going to go and use DocuSign. It's just easier. There's one example. I put a Loom video together for the peer group that myself and Andy and Alan belong to, a Loom video, 10 minutes of my exact workflow around the pre-annual planning meeting, the actual planning meeting itself, and the post-annual planning meeting, all the software applications and bits and bobs that I use. And it's scalable, it's repeatable, and it's simple. And yet all these back office systems that exist, these clunky, awful things I don't think you need to use. I think we've been raised on back office systems. They're like oxygen to us. We think we can't do without them. It's a safety blanket. They're rubbish. They're overpriced. They're really poorly written. You get lousy support, and they make it almost impossible to extract your data later on, which I think is it's a bloody disgrace. We could simplify so much in terms of the tech we use, but the message to our clients is, again, begin with the end in mind, right? You have one question to answer for your clients. The clients want to know, are we going to be all right? That's all they care about.
Okay.
And your job is to show them the path to financial salvation. And for most clients, it's going to be a GIA, a personal pension, and an ISA. That's all they need. There aren't complicated clients. There are complicated advisors. 1 in 100 clients might have a complicated situation, which means you have to write 55 trusts or some other crud, right? Okay, that's my... And I know this is an echo chamber today, but if I get hit by a bus today, which is actually the lovely Penelope's not in the country, so I'm probably safe for the next few days. That's my message to everybody listening to this. Just simplify, and don't get caught in the miasma. Andrew,
while I'm on it, another bugbear of mine: quarterly meetings. Now, shoot me. Quarterly meetings. I mean, what do you discuss every quarter with your clients? It's just going to turn into a performance conversation, surely. Biannually, okay, every 6 months, if for some reason in the early stages that's what you wanted, then great. Obviously, if there's anything specific that the client needs to go through, I'm available for meetings, so unlimited meetings once you become a client. But having set quarterly meetings for clients, I know it's not that common. And again, people think, well, they've got more money. I need to see them more. No, the more and more money I pay my accountant, the less communication I want with him. And I like the guy.
The traditional kind of 3-tier service model. Let's call it gold, silver, bronze.
Oh yeah, gold, silver, bronze. Our gold clients we see every month. Shoot me.
Well, but exactly. Well, no, the gold clients were generally quarterly, silver half yearly, and bronze once a year. And I think if you are building your service proposition on the frequency of meetings, you're doing it the wrong way around. I've had wealthy clients say to me, well, I had one guy say when we set up and we just organized everything, I said, how often do you want to meet? He said, never. He said, it's nothing personal. Nothing personal. But he said, yeah, he said, because he said, I'm busy. If you're running everything, he said, why? Classics other statement. He said, why hire a dog and bark yourself? I trust you. Get on with it. Call me when you need to speak to me. Now, we defaulted to an annual, but I think that's right. And if you're building a service proposition based on the frequency, because you're going to have probably your wealthier clients are just busier, whether they are still working or if they're retired, they're probably traveling and doing some fun stuff. They don't want to be dragged into a 90-day update review meeting. It's nuts.
Just
well said. I'm actually changing my service stand. I'm going to once a decade is my meeting. That's my standard template.
For some of your clients, that's too much.
But I'm available every second year for a 5-minute phone call. Okay, because I don't want to be mean. Okay, I think we've done this immense justice. If we're okay with that, guys, we're at 54 minutes in somehow. I think.
I suggest, Nick, we might go to the questions and then the culture corner. Bearing in mind we are 50 odd minutes in.
I think that's
Carl. It's like you saw into my P-shaped mind and you took the words out of my mouth, because I can see out the corner of my eye that Posty's at the front door.
He doesn't.
She's got our bulging sack of Trappist questions. This is where the listeners get to ask us. The Trappists get to ask us questions, and we try and answer them directly and honestly and with plain English. And you can submit your questions via Twitter at Advisor Podcast in the pinned tweet or in the so-called show notes. There is a link to click on the form to submit your questions. So let's have a look and see who's in the sack. The first envelope's being opened. Colin Bates, who's not on Twitter but is on LinkedIn. It's a long, I don't know why I asked for the LinkedIn address. They go on forever. Colin asks, what is your view on paying, this is a good one actually. What is your view on paying professional connections a referral fee? Any success/horror stories with this approach? Would you consider paying clients for a referral? Well, I'll have first dibs while the three of you collect what are often known as thoughts. I wouldn't ever pay a professional connection a referral fee. I think it sets the wrong tone. And I wouldn't also get into partnership with a professional connection who expected reciprocal stuff back unless you thought they were decent people. I wouldn't do it. And I wouldn't pay clients for referral. What I have done occasionally in the past is reward clients or give clients a gift that they weren't expecting for referring me to a client. And I do that on an ad hoc basis, depending on what kind of the referral was. So that's nice. It's not expected. That's my tuppence on that, gents. Who wants to comment on that? If anybody else at all,
I'll go next because
Yeah,
I probably got
go.
as short an answer. Go on, Carl.
Okay, well done, boys. Neither of you raised your hand. You both spoke over
Then you,
Go
Carl,
on, Andy, then Carl.
me.
Andy, then Carl.
Okay, so this is quite a deep subject. I know it a little bit. I mean, I've dabbled in this over the years. I mean, I have, when I was a mortgage broker, I paid for leads from Money Supermarket and the likes of. I've had various commercial arrangements with lawyers, insurance brokers over the years at various different firms. Yeah, now I'm sort of at the point where I wouldn't pay a referral fee. But if you were building your business and it was a bit more of a set commercial arrangement, again, I don't know what the compliance and regulatory angle on this is. I know Colin's relatively new in this business, so he's probably looking at it. Yeah, I'm similar to Nick. If someone refers me a client, I would send them a Fortnum & Mason sort of basket as a thank you or something like that. So yeah, it's not any sort of monetary exchange. It's just a gift exchange. But I'm sure there are successful ways to do this. But again, as I say, I don't have enough information or haven't done it personally. So hopefully one of these guys have. Over to you, Carl.
Full disclosure, when I set out on my journey on my own, I used to pay or offer to pay, and it was not successful. And we get a lot of referrals now from tax advisors, solicitors, and we don't pay anybody. But I suppose what we try and do is make them look really, really good. And I think we deliver a great service. And
that's it.
I think it cements our relationship with the clients and the tax advisors, solicitors. And it works really, really well. But yeah, no, we don't pay.
That's the big payoff. That's the big reward you give to an introducer, is that you do a fantastic job and it enhances their brand. That's the perfect. Yeah. Alan, anything to add?
Yep. Going against the grain, we have made a success of this. So depending upon who the professional relationship is with, I don't think in my experience anyway, traditional, I mean, lawyers forget about it and they've got issues anyway, as have accountants, I think, about receiving fees or income or shares of income. But there are some professional organizations who are just very entrepreneurial. And to use a phrase, if you create the economic glue, it helps. It helps with certain companies. So we have made a success with what are generically called corporate finance boutiques. So they're very organizations that help sell companies. That's their whole thing. They create a company. They take a company to the market, if you like, and they sell them. And I just happen to historically know or was introduced to a few different firms. And I would say to them, well, these entrepreneurs that you're helping build a business and sell the business, I said, what do they do once they've banked these millions of pounds? And the answer was, I don't know, I don't care. I'm on to the next deal. I guess to go and speak to their bank. And I said, well, how would it be if you were to refer them to us? And we do a full job. We do a comprehensive financial planning. We do all this extra work. And they said, yeah, that would seem reasonable. And so we created, and we've got several of them now, partnerships. And full disclosure, we share 50% of year one revenue. I'm playing the long game. I'm all about building recurring revenue. And I'm happy to share, the year one setup costs or the fees that we charge. Yeah. And well done, I don't know if we would have, if we didn't get, if we hadn't have done this, would we still go? I don't think we'd have got the business because some of these fees are substantial. You know, the monies involved are pretty big. If you sold a business, and a lot of these corporate finance teams, they can't deal with clients with, you know, less than 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 million because they're working on a transactional fee. So it's very important. And I think it helps them with you know, if they're getting for effectively straight to the bottom line, they're getting a fee share. We don't charge anything extra. The client is entirely neutral from the client's viewpoint, and they're receiving it. And some of to this day, some of our very biggest clients have come through that route, and it just works quite nicely. So it can work, but you've got to be selective.
Okay.
You've got to know the people in the organization. And one last thing I'll throw in about referrals from clients. I agree with everything you've said. You don't pay for them, but you know, it's nice, and send them a nice bottle of wine, or as you say, a gift hamper or something, just to acknowledge it. What we've always tried to do is when we get a referral from a client and we've taken them up, you know, taken through the whole onboarding process, and they've set up as a client, and we have this welcome meeting, which we referred to in the past. We say to that client, would you be so good as to go back to the original source? Remember Bob who introduced us? Could you go back and just say, you know, that you're pleased with the outcome? You're very pleased with the referral and the introduction, because again, being uniquely human, the person that's referred wants to know that it's worked out well. And it's quite nice if that person is hopefully very happy with having been referred. They go back and say, by the way, Bob, thanks so much. Thanks for introducing us to Capital. It's worked really well. We love it. And I'm very pleased with the outcome. And I think that just encourages people to do that again. And it kind of completes the circle. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, Capital, great.
Let's just wrap this up. Carl and then Andy.
Just a very quick one. This is why I love this podcast. Alan, that is a fantastic idea about the corporate finance houses. Note to all my Métis colleagues, we'll be doing that.
There you go.
Oh, you're giving him another
You better pay Alan for that
life-changing idea, Alan.
I know another idea that he'll execute on.
Yeah. And I will.
The old chief cloner.
Andy,
Tune
Carl
in
the
next
cloner.
week for the update. Yeah. Yeah.
are we done?
We're done.
Yep.
Okay, we're done on that one. Let's have a look at the next envelope in front of me. This is from Matt Aitchison, who I think is a repeat questioner, which is fine. One of our more keen Trappists on Twitter as @Matt_Aitchison. I think we can ask this one quickly and move on, because we kind of hammered it into the ground like a tent peg over various episodes. CRM systems, a general discussion around CRMs, back office systems, industry versus generic, e.g. are the big name players like IO worth it? Or does a simple generic CRM provide what's needed? What's good? What's not? What do you all use? What would you use? That's about 17 questions in there, Matt. So don't submit another question for at least 3 years. The generalist back office systems are rubbish. Don't use them. Look at my Loom video. Thank me later with a beer. Anyone else got anything to add quickly?
Nick, I think that works.
Oh dear.
Yeah, listen, that works for solo advisors. I agree with you. You don't need a IO or anything. Yeah, solo, but you don't need anything else. I don't believe, because you've got different. We spend, I wouldn't like to say, but it's tens of thousands of pounds per year for our CRM back office system. And trust me, I would get rid of it in a heartbeat and save the cost if we didn't have to. But there are certain functions that it performs, and it's mainly around workflow. When you've got different people in teams providing different activities and different roles, and you've got to you've got to have a very robust audit trail and know who's doing what at when. So we use it. We also use, it's not the best, but it's got a portal. You can store client documents in it. You do secure messaging, which works. We do our Gabriel, what they call RMAR reports, and the data we're able to extract very useful MI from it that we share as part of our regulatory returns, valuations, fee reconciliation.
Okay, you don't just list everything you get from it, Alan. No, just that's. I think we.
I was going to say, is everyone asleep?
Yeah. So we use it.
Long story short, big firms need them. Big firms need them. Small firms don't. To conclude, it's called Reg Data now.
I don't know what Matt is.
RMAR.
I love the acronyms.
What's it called?
Reg Data now.
I think it's RMAR, isn't it? Reg
data.
Yeah. It's the same bloody software, though. It's the same interface. They just give it different names every few months. Okay, I think we have thrashed that one through. Let's move on to the culture corner. Yeah, go on, Andy. Speak again.
I was going to say, you submit your reg data within about 9 seconds of receiving the email, don't you?
I do submit my reg data because, but I can, and I use free agent. So I've got my balance sheet, in the cloud.
You must be the
It's
fastest
always,
submitter.
I do my tax return.
FCA
I do my tax
Towers,
return
Nick,
in the early hours of 6th of
somewhere.
April.
Guys, we're still recording the podcast.
Okay.
I know. Come on,
Right.
move on. What's
I'm
next?
excited. The sun's out. Spring style. Come on.
Wow, there's something in the air today, definitely. Okay, so Culture Corner. Let's see what we have got. I'll kick off with this one. I've just finished Charlie Ellis's book, Inside Vanguard. And we all love Vanguard because it's essentially boring. And boring is pretty good when it comes to investing. Trouble is, it makes quite a boring story. Once you get past Jack Bogle, who was an absolutely miracle of a man. He should have been dead about X number of times. He had all these heart attacks as well as everything else he did in the business world and saving people billions in fees. But the actual book, I found a slog. So I'm sorry, Mr. Ellis. I'm giving your Inside Vanguard book a thumbs down. Alan Smith, The Deal Maker.
Yeah, I mean, I like these programs. It's a bit in the sort of format of the Madoff one on Netflix. This is one on BBC iPlayer. It's called The Deal Maker, $1 billion Downfall. And this was something, it passed me by. I didn't hear about it, considering the size and scale of this. A private equity company that raised $1 billion and more, including from the likes of the Bill Gates Foundation, a lot of other things. Very high profile guy, attended, what's that place they all go to? Davos. One of those people. And basically, well, allegedly, according to the documentary, because he's under house arrest still, I believe he's in London under house arrest, fighting extradition to the US. But basically just pocketed about $1 billion. And they go through the whole story. And it's just a fascinating real life story. And no doubt some people would like to have invested in it. That's a whole other thing, investing in private equity, which there seems to be a gathering momentum for retail clients. And I don't understand it. It's more complexity. So that's worth, an hour of your time. And I'm going to do a very brief shout out as well for a book called Ravenous by a guy called Henry Dimbleby, who was the founder of Leon, the fast food chain restaurant, son of David Dimbleby, successful entrepreneur. And I just interviewed him on the other leading podcast called Bulletproof Entrepreneur. So worth checking that out. And it's a great book. It's an interesting read if you're interested in the whole dynamics of the kind of food industry, which has its parallels with the investment industry as well in terms of its complexity and its desire for profits at all cost. Worth checking out. Thank you.
Yeah, I've seen a précis of that book, and it's about everything that I disagree with. But there we go. That's why we're here. We're allowed to have difference of opinion. Carl.
Yeah, there's a very famous case. I won't go into any detail on this. It's going on for 40 years in Ireland, called the Kerry Babies. And last week, there was 2 people arrested for it. Anyway, it's fairly grim. It is really, really grim. But because it happened when I was but a pup, I wasn't really up to speed on the details. So I went looking for a podcast to kind of bring me up to speed as to what happened. And I listened to it. And by God, it is so awful. And I got all philosophical about thinking about this, that Ireland 40 years ago, which is not that long ago, was just, oh my God, it was a horror show. And the way there's a lot of people giving out about the life that we have now and blah, blah, blah. And in Ireland, our kids won't be able to afford houses, blah, blah, blah. Well, do you know what? We're in so much of a better place, and human endeavor brings us to these great places. And I'm just excited to see what my kids' lives will look like, because they are in such a much better place than Ireland of the 1970s and 80s, which was bloody disgraceful. So if you want to read about or listen to a grim story, do listen to that. It will fully update you. But the point really is, we're in a great place. We're living the best possible lives we could do, and we should all be excited for the future.
Love it. Well said, Carl. Mr. Hart.
What podcast platform is it on, Carl?
I don't know. The link is in the show notes.
All right, fine.
The link
didn't know
will
if it's
be in the show
Audible
notes,
or something.
Andrew.
I didn't know if it's Audible or Spotify or something. I'll check that out.
No, it's a podcast. I searched it on the Apple Podcast, I think.
Fine. Cool. Okay,
Andy.
Mine's another podcast recommendation. It's the Modern Wisdom podcast by Chris. I can't remember his surname. Nick might remember. Anyway, it's specifically
Williams.
The podcast, Chris Williams. He interviews Govinda Bogle. I can't get enough of this guy at the moment. He's got 4 podcasts on the modern wisdom. The latest one is astronomical. I can't remember what it's called, like 14 human behavior missteps or something. He's got 4 on the modern wisdom Chris Williams podcast. I've listened to all of them at least 2 or 3 times. I just can't get enough of it. I've asked him to speak at Hum and he's ignored me, which is quite common, which means you're doing good stuff when people you look up to ignore you. You might be listening to this. If he is,
that's the story you tell yourself.
Yeah, it's so good. Govinda Bogle, if you're into psychology, human behavior, social media, decision making, virtue signaling, it is just mind blowing. Sort of stuff that's in your brain, but he sort of cobbles it together for you, and you're like, right, great. That's what I've been thinking for a while, but I haven't been able to sort of concisely communicate that. So yeah, it's fantastic. Can't get enough of it. Nick?
Drawing a link between all the conversation today and that podcast, which again you have recommended, I've listened to it and it is very good. The one about the multiply by 0, anything you should avoid anything where there's a multiple.
Yeah,
0, really smart. And you know this that can apply to some complexity around investment solutions. So you can have your great planning, great everything, great. If you invest in something which can go to 0, then it's all been a waste of time.
Well, I'll try and unpack it, Alan. You might do a better job of it than me. But this was actually Chris Williams saying this. Don't do anything in life that multiplies by 0. So, for example, I could get up early, which is like a 10. I could eat well, which is like a 50. And then I could bungee jump, which is a 0. So whenever there's a 0 in the sequence, you should avoid that 0. So be that, as I say, reading lots and then doing some crazy pursuit that is going to basically be 0. So whenever you multiply any numbers by 0, the result is 0. So the whole concept of try and avoid anything in your life that times is by 0, as in going all in.
We just lost it.
The treasure shipwreck fund or something. Alan, do you want to expand on
We've
it?
just lost a big swathe of our audience, the bungee jump entrepreneur niche in our audience. They're livid. Okay, that's great. We're at 71 minutes. Carl is itching to go and watch his national team actually lose at a sport. So I think we should let him loose to go and watch his team lose at a sport, which will bring him down to earth a little bit. Dear Trappists, that is a wrap for this episode. Thank you very much for your precious time and your input into the show. As ever, please do leave a 6 out of 5 star review on your podcast app of choice. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is burgeoning. We're now only about 800 people away from the 1,000 we need to start putting in really annoying adverts. Until the next time, guys and girls, take care, and we'll see you on the other side. Goodbye.